The day I found the lump was supposed to be ordinary. I was showering after a long day at the architectural firm where I worked as a lead designer. My fingers brushed across something unfamiliar beneath my skin, and just like that, my carefully drafted life plans began to unravel. Even now, 5 years later, the memory of that doctor's office haunts me like a recurring nightmare. The sickly beige walls seemed to close in as the oncologist's words shattered my world. Stage 2 breast cancer. Each syllable fell like a hammer blow, cracking the foundation of everything I thought my life would be. My fiancé Declan clutched my hand so tightly, the diamonds of my engagement ring cut into my skin, leaving marks I'd trace later in disbelief. I remember looking down at our intertwined fingers, feeling a wave of gratitude through my terror. At least I wouldn't face this battle alone. At least I had him. God, how wrong I was. That hand, holding mine, the hand that had slipped my engagement ring on with promises of forever, would be the first to let go when I needed it most. Declan and I had crafted what I believed was an unbreakable love story. 7 years of memories, inside jokes, and shared dreams. I still remember the night we met at that gallery opening, the way his eyes lit up at my architectural illustrations, how he asked questions that made me feel truly seen for the first time. I fell for him completely, believing we were building something eternal, something that could withstand any storm. We should postpone the wedding, he whispered the night of my diagnosis, his arm around me as I stared empty-eyed at our wedding plans spread across the dining table. I nodded gratefully through my tears, mistaking his suggestion for compassion rather than the first step toward the exit door. The surgery ravaged more than my body. It stripped away my independence. The simple joy of sketching, my lifelong passion and career, became impossible with an arm I couldn't lift above my shoulder. My drafting table stood untouched in the corner, a daily reminder of everything cancer was stealing from me. I'd catch Declan glancing at it sometimes, as if mourning the woman who used to sit there, the woman who was disappearing before his eyes. That's when he brought Amara into our home. To help you recover, he claimed, his eyes not quite meeting mine. This mysterious housekeeper who somehow always came when neither of us was home, leaving behind only the faint scent of an unfamiliar perfume that I was too exhausted, too trusting to question. The chemotherapy transformed me into someone I couldn't recognize in the mirror. My body betrayed me in new ways daily, not just the hair loss I'd braced myself for, but the gray pallor of my skin, the prominent blue veins mapping my hands like rivers, the hollows where my cheeks had been. I caught Declan looking at me one morning as I struggled to secure a silk scarf over my bare scalp. The flash of revulsion in his eyes lasted only a second, but it carved another wound deeper than any surgeon's scalpel. Still, I made excuses for his growing absence. The late nights at the office, the constant business trips, the phone that never left his hand, screen always angled away from me. I told myself he was working harder to cover medical bills, that he needed space from the suffocating weight of my illness, that his distance was protection, for him, for me, for us both. I built these explanations like paper houses, knowing deep down they couldn't withstand the slightest breeze of truth. But I needed them. Cancer had already taken so much. I couldn't bear to acknowledge it was taking him too. 3 months into chemo came the moment that shattered even my most desperate delusions. After an especially brutal treatment that left me violently ill, I lay curled on the bathroom floor, too weak to move, the cold tiles a strange comfort against my fevered skin. I'd been there for hours when I heard his key in the lock. His footsteps hesitated when he realized I wasn't in bed. Through the fog of nausea and exhaustion, I called out weakly. The footsteps approached slowly, reluctantly, until he appeared in the doorway, immaculate in his suit, cologne mingling with that now familiar perfume, while I knelt there in 3-day-old pajamas, retching into the toilet. But it wasn't our physical contrast that broke my heart. It was his eyes, not filled with love or concern, but unmistakable irritation, as if my illness had become an inconvenience that had overstayed its welcome. In that moment, staring up at the stranger who wore my fiancé's face, I knew exactly what was coming. "I think we need to talk," he said, his voice cold and formal, as if addressing a business associate rather than the woman he'd once promised to love in sickness and in health. I pulled myself up to sitting position, back against the cold bathtub, dignity the only thing I had left to cling to. "Talk then," I whispered, my voice raw from hours of vomiting. Declan shifted uncomfortably, maintaining his distance as if my illness might be contagious. "This isn't working," he said finally. "I thought I could handle it, but I can't. This isn't the life I signed up for." The words hit like physical blows, each syllable another brick crashing down from the life we'd built together. "The life you signed up for?" I echoed, disbelief making my voice tremble. "What about the vows you were going to take?" "In sickness and in health." "We never actually said those vows," he replied, a technicality that stunned me with its cruelty. "Look, there's more to it." He took a deep breath. "I've met someone. Amara." The name hung in the air between us, suddenly clicking into place with devastating clarity. "The housekeeper." The question came out as a broken whisper. "Executive assistant," he corrected reflexively, as if her job title mattered in the magnitude of this betrayal. "It just happened. We didn't plan it." "How long?" I demanded, suddenly needing to understand the full architecture of his deception. He looked away. "Since before your diagnosis." Those 5 words collapsed every assumption I'd made about our relationship. This wasn't about my cancer at all. Cancer had simply provided him the convenient exit he'd already been looking for. "Get out," I said quietly, a dangerous calm settling over me. "Not tomorrow. Not this weekend. Now." "Don't be dramatic," he started, but something in my expression made him stop. "Fine. I'll get some things and go to Amara's tonight." Of course. He already had somewhere to go. Someone waiting. The pieces connected with sickening clarity. The late nights, the business trips, the perfume that lingered even when the phantom housekeeper didn't. After the front door closed behind him, I didn't immediately break down. Instead, I did what architects do best. I assessed the structural damage and calculated what could be salvaged. By dawn, I had the blueprints for a new life, one built to withstand even this. My first call wasn't to cry on someone's shoulder. It was to my brother Elijah, 40 minutes away, the one person who would help without pity. The second call was to my oncologist, rearranging appointments to ensure my treatment schedule wouldn't be compromised by emotional trauma. The third was to my firm, where I requested a temporary work-from-home arrangement, the cancer buying me what my broken heart couldn't. Within 24 hours, Elijah arrived with supplies, determination, and righteous anger that validated my own. "I could kill him," he said as he helped me change the locks. "Not worth the prison time," I replied, surprising myself with dark humor that somehow felt like the first step toward healing. Declan texted, rather than called, asking when he could collect his things. The modern-day coward's approach to confrontation. I arranged for him to come while I was at treatment, with Elijah standing guard. He took only what was indisputably his, leaving behind joint purchases and gifts. He also left his key, a gesture that might have seemed respectful if it weren't so laughably redundant, given the new locks. Through mutual connections, I learned that Amara had moved into Declan's new downtown apartment within days. They were spotted at restaurants, theaters, industry events, all the places my immunocompromised body couldn't safely go. She wore my former life with apparent ease, slipping into spaces I'd been forced to vacate. Meanwhile, I fought, not just cancer, but depression, abandonment, and a profound identity crisis. Who was I without my health, my relationship, my usual work routine? The one constant was my love of architecture. On good days between treatments, I sketched new designs from bed. On bad days, I studied architectural journals, losing myself in the clean lines and innovative structures others had created. 4 months later, my oncologist delivered the news we'd hoped for. Remission. The cancer was gone, though regular monitoring would be necessary. I celebrated by taking the silk scarf I'd worn throughout treatment, cutting it into tiny pieces and releasing them from my balcony, watching as they danced away on the wind like fragments of my past. Recovery wasn't linear. Some days I felt almost normal, others brought bone-deep fatigue that no amount of rest seemed to touch. But gradually, consistently, I rebuilt my strength through specialized physical therapy and nutrition designed for cancer survivors. My hair grew back thicker than before, with a slight wave that hadn't existed previously. I embraced the change, cutting it into a sharp, angular bob that framed my more defined face. A face that had lost its softness but gained character, like weathered stone revealing its true structure. As my body recovered, I made decisions. I sold the apartment, unable to separate it from memories of betrayal. I found a light-filled loft closer to my firm and designed the interior myself, creating a space that reflected who I was becoming rather than who I'd been. I immersed myself in work, developing the community center project that had been interrupted by my diagnosis, infusing it with elements inspired by healing spaces. Dating wasn't a priority, but human connection was. I joined a support group for young cancer survivors, finding unexpected friendship with people who understood both the medical journey and its emotional aftermath. I reconnected with college friends who drifted during my years with Declan. I began mentoring young female architects at local universities. 1 year post-treatment, I received an industry award for the community center design. The ceremony was small but significant, covered by architectural journals and local press. I wore a tailored emerald suit that highlighted my new physique. Stronger now from regular strength training, my body no longer just a battleground, but a testament to resilience. 2 weeks later, Declan emailed. The subject line read simply, "Congratulations." I stared at it in my inbox, cursor hovering over the delete button, before curiosity won out. "I saw the article about your award. The design is extraordinary, but then you always were. I've been thinking about you constantly. Amara and I broke up 3 months ago. I've had time to reflect on my mistakes, and I need to apologize for everything. Would you consider meeting for coffee? Just to talk." D double quote. I didn't respond. He tried again a week later with a longer email explaining how he'd panicked when I got sick, how he'd been immature and afraid of losing me to cancer. So he'd self-destructively pushed me away first. He wrote about therapy and growth and regrets. Again, I didn't respond. The third attempt came in person. I was leaving my firm's building when I heard his voice. "Alexandra." I turned to see Declan standing there, looking simultaneously familiar and foreign. He'd aged in the 18 months since I'd seen him. Fine lines appearing around his eyes, a slight softening to his jawline that suggested stress or perhaps simple time. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Please?" Something about his desperation intrigued me, not because I felt anything for him, but because I wanted to understand what he could possibly say after everything. We walked to a nearby cafe, maintaining careful distance. I ordered a specialty coffee. He got the same, though I remembered he'd always preferred tea. "You look incredible," he said once we were seated. "Healthy." "Strong." "I am," I replied simply. He fidgeted with his cup. "I've made terrible mistakes. The worst was leaving when you needed me most." Yes, I agreed, offering nothing more. Amara, he started, then stopped himself. That's not important. What matters is that I've had time to realize what I threw away. The life we planned, the future we could have had. I took a sip of my coffee, studying him over the rim. Why are you telling me this? Because I still love you, he said, leaning forward. Because I want another chance. The declaration hung between us. 2 years ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they were just syllables from someone who'd become a stranger. Do you know what happened after you left? I asked calmly. He began to speak, but I continued. I redesigned my life without you in it, and it turned out better than our original plans. The foundation is stronger now. We could build something new, he suggested. Start fresh. I shook my head. You're missing the point. I'm not available for renovation. My life is already constructed exactly as I want it. Is there someone else? He asked, a flash of something possessive crossing his face. That's irrelevant, I replied. This isn't about another person. It's about me choosing what I deserve. His expression fell. I understand I hurt you deeply. I'll spend years making it up to you, if that's what it takes. That's just it, I said, gathering my things to leave. You don't understand at all. This isn't about hurt feelings or time or forgiveness. It's about incompatible values. When I needed partnership most, you showed me exactly who you are. I stood but paused for one final thought. The irony is, if you'd stayed, I probably would have married you out of gratitude and loyalty, never knowing what a one-sided foundation we had. Instead, you freed me to build something authentic. I walked out into the spring afternoon, feeling nothing but peaceful clarity. My phone buzzed with a text from Julian, an environmental engineer I'd been seeing for a few months. We were taking things slowly, both of us carrying past experiences that had taught us to value careful construction over rushed development. Still on for the gallery opening tonight, he'd written. I smiled and replied affirmatively, looking forward to sharing my perspective on the architectural elements of the exhibited photographs. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation from mutual friends. The RSVP card included a note. Declan will be attending solo. We wanted you to know. I appreciated their thoughtfulness, but found I didn't need the warning. I attended with Julian, now officially my partner, and exchanged polite greetings with Declan before focusing on celebrating our friends. Life continued its forward momentum. My career flourished with increasingly prestigious commissions. Julian and I moved in together, blending our lives with intentional care. My 5-year cancer-free milestone approached, a more significant anniversary to me than any I'd shared with Declan. Occasionally, I reflected on how differently everything had turned out from my original blueprint. Cancer and betrayal had forced a complete redesign, yet the resulting structure was more innovative, more authentic, and ultimately more beautiful than what I'd originally planned. Last month, I received a small package at my office. Inside was a newspaper clipping about a building I'd designed that had just opened, along with a short note. You've created something remarkable. I always knew you would. Wishing you continued success and happiness. Double quote. I recycled both without response. Some chapters don't need epilogues. To anyone facing similar circumstances, betrayal during illness or any life crisis, know this. Sometimes the people who leave when you need them most are clearing the way for something better. The collapse of what you thought was structural may reveal it was merely decorative all along. My life now stands on a foundation of my own making, reinforced by those who proved their reliability during the strongest storms. It's not the life I once sketched out, but it's more magnificent than anything I could have originally designed. Update. I'm overwhelmed by the response to this post. To answer the most common questions, Yes, I remain cancer-free at the 5-year mark, though I continue regular checkups and maintain lifestyle changes that support my health. Julian knows about this post and fully supports my sharing our story. He says the right partner enters your life exactly when you're ready to recognize them. My community center design has been featured in several architectural publications and is being used as a case study for healing-focused spaces in several universities. Declan and Amara's relationship ended because, according to mutual friends, she eventually recognized the pattern. As she told a colleague, if he could do that to someone with cancer, what would he do to me in crisis? And to those asking if I ever regret not giving Declan another chance, not for a moment. Some designs aren't meant to be revisited. The view from where I stand now is far too beautiful to look back. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more emotional stories from our channel.